So, good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. So, before we start the program, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. It means a lot that you have chosen to have me spend some time with you, me and my guest today. It means a lot because you're busy people, and I know what you're doing. You're taking care of your kids, and that is a lot. That keeps you busy. So thank you for making us part of your day. It means a lot. And today is really a pleasure to welcome to the Hamilton Review, Kirsten Jones. She's an author. She's a mother. She has written a book which is entitled Raising Empowered Athletes. Her subtitle is A Youth Sports Parenting Guide for Raising Happy, Brave, and Resilient Kids. For those of you who are parents, let me say this. I can't think of a better thing that you want to do other than raising happy, brave, and resilient kids. That's kind of one of the big goals in life. So, Kirsten Jones, thanks for coming on the Hamilton Review today.
Dr. Bob, thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So, I know that you've listened to a couple of episodes of my podcast, so you kind of know that I like to have my guest introduce himself. So I'm going to stop talking and turn the microphone over to you and just tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, the things that kind of caused you to be doing what you're doing today. So, Kirsten, you're on.
Sure. So, yes, I was raised in Missoula, Montana, which I was raised in the 70s and 80s. And during the 70s and 80s, parenting was open the front door, let the kids run out. When the lights go off, when they get hungry, they'll come home. And I played every sport under the sun, whatever season it was, softball, tennis, you know, water skiing, snow skiing, downhill, like all the things. Had a horse. We lived on 29 acres. I had a really amazing childhood where we got to try and experiment in everything. My parents were very much about academics. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse, and they really wanted their three daughters to focus on academics and piano and ballet. And piano and ballet were like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I chased anything with a ball. And so when I told them that I really wanted to play a sport in college, they kind of said, okay, but as long as you're focused on your academics. And so I ended up trying out for the Junior Olympic team in Colorado Springs. I found out they were taking a team from all over the United States, having only played a couple years of volleyball in my life. Because it really wasn't a big sport in Montana. There were no club sports. I showed up at Colorado Springs and the San Diego State assistant coach was there, 150 kids. I made it to maybe the top 30. I don't really remember, except for I remember thinking, this is fun. I haven't played this that much, and I could get so much better. And so as I was flying back out of the Denver airport, I chased the San Diego State assistant coach down the concourse and said, can I come play for you? And she said, well, we don't have any scholarships. And I said, I don't care. And I'm so grateful. I had two parents who I had a full ride to go play at University of Montana, basketball and volleyball. And my parents said, it's your life. If that's what you want to do, go for it.
Wow.
And so that's what I ended up doing, right? Which is such an amazing gift. A lot of parents would have just said, too bad. This is the opportunity you have. I having never been to the school, having never met the head coach, having never met the girls, having really never done anything but look at the guidebook of what San Diego State was about before I arrived, it ended up not being a great fit. I redshirted 1 year, I played two, but calling home crying, every day after a while with the coach really not being a great fit for me. My parents said, This is ridiculous. Why are you doing this? Just transfer to a good school and chase, a different dream." But I still had something left undone. And my older sister had gone to University of Virginia, and she said, "Oh, there's this little school down south in Virginia called William and Mary." So I put my VHS tape together and I mailed it to her. And Debbie Hill from the William and Mary volleyball program said, "You should come." And I went transferred to William and Mary, where I said I really got the best of both worlds. I got to play in a top 15 program at San Diego State and a top academic program at William and Mary. We won the conference. We went to the postseason tournament. I had the best experience, but it was all driven by, and I didn't even realize it at the time, just my own curiosity. I ended up getting a Japanese degree, Hajime Mashite, Doji Roshika, speaking, living in Japan for a little bit, but being 6 feet tall and blonde, just didn't really fit in. So ended up moving to Eastern Europe of all places because both of my sisters were living in Budapest, Hungary. And so was playing volleyball over there, trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life when I met a tall drink of water who walked into an Irish pub one night from Eugene, Oregon, and we started talking about dream jobs. And he said, "Well, I want to work from Nike for Nike. I'm from Eugene, Oregon." I said, "That sounds great." So lo and behold, Nike had an office in Vienna, Austria. I jumped on a train, showed up at their doorstep, and they hired me. And I worked for Nike for almost 15 years in Vienna, Stockholm, Amsterdam. Eventually, along the way, married that cute, tall man, and we had 3 children. Ended up at world headquarters. And so along the way, I taught basically an internal MBA program at Nike was my last job and my favorite job. And I think that was the predecessor to what, oh, I know it was the predecessor to what I'm doing now, which was helping teams, ideas, collaborate. Those are corporate athletes. So I was doing it at Nike from a corporate standpoint.
Sure.
And then I was like, I love helping people get out of their way, figure out what's holding them back. So I got my life coaching certification about 15 years ago. About 7 years ago, I had this idea. I got 3 kids on the sidelines. These people are crazy. Like, why are these parents yelling so much? Why are they, making such a fuss over this? And my joke is when we got pregnant back in the day, my kids are now 24, 21, and 18. Everyone would hand you what to expect when you're expecting, and you think, oh, this is awesome. This is the Bible to parenting. Like, I know exactly what to do every week of every month of every pregnancy. Yet, 4 years later, you're standing on the sidelines of kick and chase or t-ball or pick your sport, and you got some yay who's standing next to you telling you, well, you don't have a private coach yet. Well, you're not going. We're not doing this, and you start to feel the FOMO. Like, am I doing this right? And so, having worked at Nike, having been a D1 athlete, now have being raising 3 athletes, this is not an academic treatise. I don't have a PhD in this, but it's lived experience, and it's again, hopefully bringing some calm to what's going on in this world. It's now a $37 billion business. It's almost twice the size of the NFL. So, people are chasing the money, like, and where there's money to be made. And what is one thing parents will open their bank accounts for? Their kids,
Their children.
right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely right. Okay, so I want to back up for 1 second, Kirsten. So you became a Japanese major. Now,
Yes.
that's
No.
that to me
Woo!
is like, okay, that just kind of hit me exactly from the kind of like the broad side of me there. Can you tell us just can you kind of dig into that? So you speak Japanese?
I used to, fairly fluently, actually. So when I was in college, I applied to Cornell. I wanted to go to the hotel school. Again, I don't know why, because I slept in a few hotels growing up. Like, I don't, when you're 18, the decisions we make, right? And I didn't get into Cornell. So somebody said, well, you could just major in Japanese. And if you speak fluent Japanese, they own most of the, this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. You'll get a job in the hotel business. Okay. So, of course, I got the Japanese degree, and then I was like, "Oh, never even worked at a hotel. Like, why would I want to do
Well,
that?"
I
Didn't get
understand I understand they speak a lot of Japanese in Budapest. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that translated really well. So I got to Hungary, and the only words that would come out of my mouth, my both of my sisters spoke fluent Hungarian, which is a very difficult language, and Japanese kept flowing out of my mouth, which was just funny. But eventually, I became proficient in Hungarian as
In
well.
Hungarian as well, because I mean, Hungarian. I mean, listen, Japanese is pretty tough to learn too, but Hungarian, I'm told, is they're the
Finnish.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah,
Finnish and Hungarian are the only 2 that kind of correlate, but yeah, there is nothing similar.
yeah. It's a very odd language. It actually came out of Central Europe. Actually, the Magyars are the people who came down and colonized Hungary, and so it's apparently one of the most difficult languages to learn in the world. So you know Hungarian as well. Is that
Well, like,
correct?
again, that was back in the 90s, so I knew enough. Back then there was an expat community of maybe 10,000, so you would find other expats, but you needed to learn to, order in a restaurant and get around. My older sister did become completely fluent to the point that she was working in an ad agency and they didn't even know she spoke English. So she definitely has the musical ear and was able to pick it up. My Hungarian was okay. It was enough to order and get in a cab and give directions and speak, pidgin Hungarian.
Hungarian. Well, that's amazing. So, okay, and then you met your husband in an Irish pub. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Is
in
it
Budapest.
okay in Budapest? Okay, so okay, so was it in Ireland? It was actually in Budapest. Okay,
He was there playing pro basketball, so he played at Johns Hopkins and then at Davis, and then he bought a guitar and made his way to Germany, played 1 year in Germany, and then was playing on a Hungarian team in Budapest, and I had been there for a year or 2, and so when we met, we were both like, "Okay, we're both athletes, we love to travel, we love to be overseas, what are we gonna do next?"
get married.
And
You're gonna get
Nike.
married. Is
Yeah,
what you're
well,
gonna
yeah. Get that
do.
get
Did he work for Nike too?
Not yet, but eventually. Yeah, so I got the job first. He finished his playing career, and then, yes, we got hired, by the Eastern European office, which was based in Vienna at the time, and then they moved it up to Stockholm. We were in Stockholm for 2.5 years, from 95 to 98, went to everywhere, Poland, Czech, Hungary, Russia, you everywhere. It was so much fun to travel and represent Nike, and I've got some amazing experiences in my mid-20s
Wow.
that you just don't get to have, right? I like to tell young kids, like, I had a backpack and my mom's frequent flyer miles. I didn't have any money, but you're never in your life going to go, oh, what a mistake. I never should have gone traveling, right? No, like that's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
No
That's
mortgage, no job, you don't know
yeah.
what you want to do in
No,
life.
no
That's
kids to worry
okay.
about. You just can. You're a free bird. You don't really realize. I don't think you realize how free of a bird you are until later on, and then you kind of look
Yeah.
back and kind of go, "Wow." So
Yeah.
okay, so you're on the getting back to your book because I'm. This is a fascinating conversation because your experience in Missoula, Montana, is not that dissimilar to my experience in Eureka, California. And those people who follow this podcast know enough about me. I'm not going to go through that. But I was raised in a small town, and you're right. My parents would let us out of the house, and we would come back in, and usually when it was dark. Now, mind you, we had a 900 square foot house, so it wasn't like they were letting me out of a 4,000 square foot mansion in Eureka. There were none, by the way. So we all grew up in this kind of middle class kind of life. So we went out, and we our house was so small you had to go outside to change your mind. Put it that way. But so you're sitting there. You moved to West Los Angeles area, and you're on the you're at the soccer field or wherever you're at, and you're watching people go crazy. These parents who are really seem to be, and I think this is true because I've been on those same sidelines, and you see people who seem to be more into it than their kids are into it. They're like trying to direct the show. So tell us about you're watching this, and what were your feelings? What were your feelings when you saw this in front of your eyes?
Well, chapter 2, and thank you for plugging the book, but chapter 2 is whose dream is it really? And when we talk about how did we get here, in the 50s and 60s, about 24% of women worked outside of the home. By the 70s and 80s, that number had doubled. So what's happening? Kids are coming home from school. There's nothing to do. Maybe mom and dad both aren't there, which now, by the way, that number is close to 90%, right? In 1979, Adam Walsh gets abducted and it makes national news. 38 million people turn on their TV to see it's not safe to let your kids go outside anymore. 1981, this little channel comes online, ESPN. Okay, now I can turn on my TV and at any time I can see, look at Andre Agassi, look at Tiger Woods, look at Nadia Comaneci, look at the 10,000 hour rule that was, made famous by Malcolm Gladwell's book, but really the research done by a Hungarian psychologist, actually, talking about if we do something for a long time, then we will get proficient at it. Similarly, at that time, when the parents are both working, the dads are saying, well, gosh, I could help. Maybe I jump in and coach Jimmy's baseball game. So now you have what goes from just rec ball to dads starting to participate, which is wonderful, right? In theory, it's
Right.
great. So in the 80s and early 90s, dads are now stepping in. They're starting to help.
Yep.
Um, And similarly, in the mid 80s, a report comes out that the Americans are falling behind academically. Like for the first time, we're no longer the smartest nation. So I think, my the premise of my book is like this pot of things that we're all kind of simmering under there. And then we get to the late 80s, early 90s, where somebody has the idea, well, gosh, if we put all of our favorite kids on one team and we were better and we got more competitive, then we could take them to the next level. And the competition starts to take off. And then AAU and now Nike and Adidas and all these shoe teams start to come in and money starts to flow to it. And then, with the light of ESPN, and this is all even pre-internet, but you start to see, oh, there's this opportunity to get a full ride scholarship. Like, so we start chasing the money. And that's where I think things really start to go sideways. When we know today, the latest statistics say less than 6% of kids who play high school sports will get to play D1, D2, will play anywhere after college, and
Yeah.
0.001% will go pro. So this isn't about the scholarship. This isn't about the podium. This isn't about pro. This is about, and to your earliest point, raising athletes for life. Because what we know is kids who play past the age of 13, in fact, if you are active as a 23-year-old, your rates of depression and anxiety and overwhelm go down dramatically. And what we know about girls are girls who played sports. 94% of C-suite women played sports.
Wow.
So sports is about giving you grit and resilience and, oh, I can do the hard thing and, oh, I can lean into it. I don't think parenting is bad. And I don't think there's a single parent out there that's like, ooh, let me screw up my kid. But I do think we've lost perspective,
Yeah.
and our children are suffering.
No, I happen to be a big believer in sports. I mean, just because of teamwork, you learn how to win, you learn how to lose, you learn how to, encourage people. You're part of a team. You're part of a bigger entity than yourself. So the world does not revolve around yourself. You realize that you need the back row. In volleyball, you need the spikers, you need all those people, and they all are important. And so you learn how to work together as a team. It's actually, listen, I did grow up playing sports. And I think that was a really, really big part of who I am. And, the coaches, of course, I played football, and they were not exactly, they didn't, they wouldn't make it in today's world, put it that way. They would like grab you and throw you down and say, well, why did you screw up that tackle? And, they were not always the kindest. But if you could endure that kind of treatment, I think we were better. I think I was able to take the good from those kind of situations and throw out the bad. But anyway, so what you're saying is that people who have been in sports, oftentimes take that knowledge, that experience, and put it into other places. And I think that's so true. I really believe that, Kirsten. I didn't know the statistic that you say that women who are in the C-suites are, we said 95%. Did you say that?
Yeah, and it didn't say 95% or 94% played in college. No, it just said you participated in sport. And I mean, I found it at Nike. It was amazing sitting around a table, a boardroom table, and you could immediately see, oh, he was a runner. Oh, she was a basketball player. You could see I mean, they were all athletes, but who played interconnected sports and who played individual sports, right? And we need all of them, right? It's great to be a track team. We're not interdependent, but we all have our own role. But then we also have these sports that have interdependencies, like basketball, like volleyball, like it's all about a football team. And those are the skills that, as you said, are critical for how they're going to navigate long after the ball stops bouncing. And PS, I mean, it stops bouncing for us all. Even LeBron is going to have to stop soon, right? There is a time when we've got to pivot. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to decide when we pivot. But now what we're seeing, and this is what I hear from a lot of parents, is they don't have delusions of their kid playing in college. They'll say, I just want my kid to play through high school. And making the high school team has gotten so hard that if you're not playing club, and it's funny, I was actually speaking out in Eastern LA a couple months ago, and the mom and then an administrator came up and were talking to me, and they said, I said, she said, well, what are some of the ways that we can encourage them playing all the way through high school? And I said, well, have some no cut sports. And she said, oh, yeah, we do that. And I said, oh, okay, like what? And she said, badminton. And the mom standing next to her goes, oh, no, no, badminton has cuts. And the woman was like, really? She didn't even know that. Right. So, a lot of schools will have no cut football, no cut track and field, that allow at least your freshmen and sophomores. But I say keep them playing as long as you can. And if they're under 13, focus on the three F's: friends, fun, and fundamentals. Find a coach that knows the game well enough that we are focused on the wrong. Well, we are 9U champions. There's no such thing as 9U national champions. The only thing we should be gauging at 9 is whether they loved it enough that they want to sign up the next year.
Yeah.
But I have 10-year-olds come to me in tears. I wrote about it in the book of a parent that said, came hat in hand and he's like, we're trying it for one last time. And I said, what do you mean trying it? Well, he's 5. He's already gotten cut from 3 baseball teams. So 5? I
Yeah.
mean, this is
Yeah.
nuts.
It's crazy. No, I completely agree that these teams that are so competitive and really, unfortunately, in more of the high schools, you're absolutely right. Is hard to get on the team. And I ask this question to my patients. I say, "Are you playing any sports?" And they go, "Well, I played in junior high. Or I played earlier, but I don't play anymore because I never made the team." And so there's, one thing about college is college have these intramurals sports, which are kind of non-cut, right? You don't have to,
Mhm.
you can just kind of show up and they'll take you on the intramural team because they're looking for bodies. And that's so much is so wonderful. And they're
Yep.
almost like we need intramural teams within high school and junior high as well to keep these kids out from behind, screens and keeping them active because obviously when we talk about not doing sports, what happens? I mean, you tell me what happens. Well, kids hang around and do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, and that's with boys, you're seeing pornography and video games becoming the driving force behind things. And for girls, it's all the social media. And I've had multiple clients actually just in the last couple of weeks. They're 10, they're 11. And the report is the mom will say, well, he's really angry. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, the one of them had punched a hole in the wall. And I said, what are you saying? Well, he's a really good student and he loves baseball and he'll practice baseball when I make him. I said, well, what's he doing the rest of his time? So, well, we let him play 2 hours of Fortnite every day. And I
wow,
was like, yeah. And I said, she goes, well, that's back. We used to play like 4 or 5 hours. And what happened during COVID, again, not blaming the parents, during COVID, they couldn't go out and play.
yeah, that's
So
right.
the way of playing was to connect with a friend over a video game. So that was the only social connection they had. But what we see is that is driving depression, anxiety. It's not connecting, it's not looking, it's not doing what we had to do was go out and you make up the rules and somebody wins and somebody loses and there's not an adult involved, but you're actually creating the game as you go.
Yeah,
And what's happening to those kids is the anger that's building up inside is based on them not going out and actually engaging with
engaging in
others
life.
and
Yeah,
playing.
and I like what you just said. No adult involved. In other
Yeah.
words, we used to go out and play football in the street. It wasn't tackle football, but it was sometimes you played tackle football in the front yard, but we would play, touch football and flag football, whatever. And there was no adult. We basically went out there, and if there was a dispute, we would scream at each other and say, "Yes, you were out of, you were over the line. You were not." We would get angry at each other and and argue forever. But then we go back to playing and we learned how to engage each other in that level. And there was nobody, blowing a whistle saying, stop doing that. It was us doing it because we want. I remember going, door to door in my neighborhood and saying, hey, let's go. You guys want to play baseball? And it was, that was how we did it. We said, I'm bored. I want to play something. I want to go play, football or baseball or whatever it was. And that was kind of how the games happened. It was definitely sandlot baseball, sandlot football, and that to me, I think, is the epitome of what you. It was fun, by the way. We had a super time.
And think of the life skills you gained by that. Learning how to advocate for yourself, learning how to problem solve, learning how to become a teammate. Like all of those things that again, we're all talking about what trophy our kid got, and that doesn't matter. And our kids are now feeling a lack of agency because everything is organized for them. All they have to focus on, all they should focus on is school and their sport. And what happens when one of those isn't going well? And that's a lot of times when I get the phone call is she's coming off of an injury, or this coach doesn't like us, or, so now I have, some type of, adversary in my way. And what do people do? Oh, well, we're just going to go to a different school. We're going to go to a different team. We're going to change the playing field because it's not working for us. So they're not getting that chance to problem solve. They're
Yeah.
not getting that chance to advocate for themselves and learn, it doesn't always go my way, but I'm okay.
Yeah. No, exactly. And frankly, in this life, a lot of times it does not go our way. We all know that. I would like to kind of have you comment a little bit about this idea of whose vision or whose life is it? Is it your life? Whose dream? I think is is the name
Yep.
of your chapter. And you talk about a couple people. You talk about Agassi and also Marinovich. Tell us a little bit about these stories because I think they're so profound and illustrative of what you do not want to do. So tell us about Marinovich. Start with that one.
I started with these stories because I do feel like it was probably part of what started this whole craze, because people saw the success on the outside of what happened. But Andre Agassi's dad was an Iranian boxer and very well respected and made it to the Olympics and all of that. But none of his children, of the first four children he had, were good athletes. So he was working in Vegas in casinos, and he built by hand a tennis court in the backyard. And Andre's book, honestly, is one of my favorite. Open, his autobiography. I listened to it in the car. I remember with the kids, and my kids still talk about it on a car ride cross country. And then I remember reading it, and I was flabbergasted by the number of times he's talking about it. Not that then I didn't win this, and then this didn't go well. The adversity that he had all the way through his childhood, which started, he said, against the green machine. He said, my dad would make me stay out there and hit against the ball machine for hours
Yeah.
in the sun. And if I hit 1,000 balls a day, that'd be 7,000 a week. That would be, my dad had done the math. And then this was at the start of IMG, which was when, Nick Bollettieri, calls and says, I'll take your kid for $600 or something. And he goes, at 11, I was shipped off to Florida and said, I didn't want to go there. That was not my dream. That was not what I wanted. But I got there and I thought, okay, I'll plug my nose. I'll get through that. And I remember the day when I was so excited. It was my time to go home. And Bollettieri calls me in. He gets my dad on the phone and he says, Dad, you're so lucky. I'm going to rip up your check. Your kid is so talented. I'll keep him and you don't even have to pay me.
Wow.
And Andre says, that was the day that the prison door shut on my life. And yes, he went on to fame and riches and he won many, many, many titles, but he also had, some personal headwinds. He had a drug issue later, and then as he and Steffi Graf, also a wonderful athlete herself, went to raise their kids, they were the ones that are, and this is what I find living in Los Angeles, as do you, is the pro athletes I'm around and the highest level athletes, they lean the furthest back in their parenting because they know how hard it is. And they know that it's got to be your dream. And by your dream, I mean your kid's dream.
Yep.
And if you want it more than your kid, if you're the one that's always pushing, always asking, what's more, what's more, what's more, and it's happening earlier and earlier. And so I'm seeing very, very talented athletes who could go play at the next level. And I have a story about it in the book about a kid who, great golfer, dad loved it, he loved it. They started having lessons together. He starts playing on the junior tour. They go to all the different tournaments. At 15, 16, Stanford comes calling. He's like, we won the parenting lottery. My kid's going to Stanford on a full ride in golf. Until the day before he's supposed to head out, he says, Mom, Dad, let's talk. I'm not going to Stanford and I'm never playing golf again.
Wow.
Now, I don't think that's bad parenting, right? Like you can say, well, that's not his fault. But I do think we need to keep checking in because a 9-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, I mean, I've got 24, 21, and 18, and you ask them, what do you want to do next week? Much less what's for dinner tonight. They don't know. So when you hear your 10-year-old say, and I have parents, I had a dad on the phone a couple weeks ago. Well, my daughter wants to play D1 soccer. Okay, great. Like, how old is she? She's 9. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, it's nice for her to have an aspiration. And I'm not saying she didn't say that, but that's a million years from now. That's not what we should be focusing on.
sure. That's no, absolutely. And I mean, write in your book that Andre Agassi's father actually taped a ping pong paddle on his newborn's hand. Is that
Yeah.
hand? Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And the kicker to that story too was when he was interviewing his dad later, and he said, "Dad, any regrets?" And his dad said, "No, only one." I said, "What, Dad? What was that?" He said, "Well, I should have had you play golf. You could have played a lot longer, and you could have made a lot more money."
okay. Well, his dad didn't quite get the picture. I guess he didn't quite learn. He also called that, I think that machine, that tennis machine that was pitching the balls, he called it the Dragon or something. What was it? What was the name of
Green.
it?
I think it was a green monster.
Green Monster. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So poor Andre, he was traumatized, and he, yes, he became a household name. I mean, but at a great cost. And the Marinovich, I found the story of quarterback Marinovich also fascinating. He was a superstar, but he was like a test tube. He was almost like
Athlete.
a scientific experiment from his father. Is that how it went?
Yes, so my book coach, who thank you for the kudos on the well writing. I can't take all the credit. I worked with this amazing gentleman, Bob Welch, who wrote an SI article on Todd Marinovich when he was coming out of high school because he was the golden child, and the name of the article was the test tube athlete,
Well,
and all of the research was he wasn't ever even allowed to have ketchup. He didn't go to birthday parties because there was sugar. Like his dad, same. He had a emotion, a psychologist and a psychiatrist and all of the things for the kid when he was 6 and 8 and 10, all with the goal from the very beginning that I'm going to make the best football player. And he did. He got to USC on a full ride, and he was the next coming until he got out of his dad's grip, and he got way into drugs, and he got drafted, and then he's been in and out of prison as an adult, and as has the father, for the last 20 years. So it's a very cautionary tale about, you know, what is it? I always like the idea of a tree, and parents think of the roots growing down into the ground, and there are going to be headwinds, but the more rooted we are and grounded we are in why we're doing what we do, why we're exposing our kids to what we do, that not if, but when the winds blow, when it rains, when the tornadoes come, we're not going to be reacting to everything that happens. Well, look
yeah.
what they're doing. Oh, this is better. Oh, we have to go here. And I know, eighth graders who are posting on Twitter, posting their high school announcements. I'm moving from Florida to Utah to, continue my dream. And they're 14. Like it's too much too soon. And those stories I think are going to be similar to the Agassiz and the Marinoviches.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you see that that burnout is real. I mean, and there's a point where, especially when kids turn around and realize that they've kind of lost their junior high and high school years, they don't really they've never really done anything other than whatever it may be, what sport that their parents kind of push them into. What kind of things? I mean, I have a couple of things that I always tell parents. One of them is music. I think music is great.
Mhm.
We have 3 kids, and they're becoming young adults. What kind of things? By the way, I have to brag a little bit on Kirsten Jones. She has 2 kids who are D1 athletes. So, what do they play? By the way, I'm curious. What sports?
So the 2 boys are playing basketball, and my
Okay.
daughter played volleyball through high school, but then said, she goes, "I'm done. I don't want to play in college." And I said, "Great." By the way, it took 52 times, give or take 20, for me to say it to her that I don't care whether you play or not. And that's what, parents, you may be saying, and I do get parents saying, "Yeah, I tell them that I don't care." But how are we showing up? Where are we placing our money, our time, our values? They're getting it through everything that we're telling them and
Yep.
showing them, and how we're putting our time and our resources. So yeah, I like to say I believe our job as parents, and this is the way I was raised, as I mentioned in the very beginning, was to set the buffet and to give, again, my parents made me play piano and I played trumpet. And, it wasn't my thing, but both of my sisters are great pianists to this day, ballet as well. But having them try lots of different things. And the one cute story I like to tell about my now 24-year-old, we were living in San Diego. He was 10. I said, we're going to learn how to surf. We just got to California and we went to the beach to take a surfing lesson. And he was pouting and he's like, you can't make me do this. And he had his basketball shoes on and I don't care about this. But that one day we had a camera and I got one picture of him in his little wetsuit up by the surfboard. He caught a wave. I don't even remember if he caught a wave the rest of the time, but I have that one picture. Fast forward 10 years, it's COVID. He's home from school. He's not allowed to do anything, but a buddy says, "You want to go surf?" And so he starts surfing down in Manhattan Beach, and I hear him on the phone a couple weeks later, and he says, "Yeah, I surfed as a kid, so I've picked it up again." And so parents who we think, right? Well, they've got to have the lessons, and they got to be really good at it, and we no, they don't. Our job is to just expose them to it. And same with music. So my husband happens to work in the music business. He brought a guitar with him to Europe. His dream job after Nike was to work for Fender Guitar, and that's what brought us to Los Angeles. Is he works for Fender and he plays music. And so both of the boys now also play guitar. And I don't care if you ever make a dime off of it. What a great way when you're stressed, when you just want some time alone. They write their own tunes, they have time to themselves. Both of them took guitars with them to college. And what a fun way for them to connect with their dad, away from home too. So it can, if you have an artist, if you have, whatever their other interests are. And here parents is the point is what did they love to do when they were little? Like
Yeah.
if you just let them be, what would they gravitate towards? Were they doing Legos? Were they drawing? Were they, out selling lemonade? Like you can see the entrepreneurs right out of the gate. You know, those skills are innate,
Yeah.
and foster those skills,
Yeah.
and maybe the sport will work out. But this over here, these other skills are life skills that are huge gifts.
So good. That's exactly what I tell people. You gotta, part of it. And listen, we had 6 kids, and I look back and I think that part of it we kind of it's hard to helicopter 6 kids. It really is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So to a degree, our kids were, my kids, I think, swear that I never looked at one of their report cards, and I think that's true. I don't remember looking at report cards and certainly we did not scroll. We were not, we were not managing our kids, maybe on a day by day basis for sure. But I do think that finding the gifting, in your children is what we need to do as parents. And when you see the gifting, obviously you want to foster that. You want to encourage that. And kind of along that thought, you have ideas about when to become a solo sports person, because you grew up playing every sport. You told me
Mhm,
that you
mhm.
played, when the season was football, you played football, basketball, whatever it was, you were engaged in that particular activity, in terms of seasonality. When is it time to begin to focus on one sport?
So, unfortunately, there's no quick, tried and true answer to this. But what we do know is that the longer you play multiple sports, the better athlete you'll be. B, the more well rested you will be. Your body will be able to maintain it. If you're only doing one motion, and I'm sure you see this in your practice a lot, right? The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends you take 3 months off in between every sport, which of course is laughable because they go from club to high school and they get a weekend off. It's not happening. But what we want is 92% of players in the NFL played multiple sports till college. I just had the USA Olympic volleyball coach on. He coached for 17 years, Terry Liskevich. And he said, in my best team, 6 of the 12 athletes on that women's team played multiple sports in college,
Wow.
right? And that's what kept them healthier. What we're seeing now is Tommy John surgery in 12-year-olds. We're seeing, knee blowouts at 15 and 17. So their bodies are breaking down. I mean, my 24-year-old, again, the number of concussions and the friends who have had back surgery and knee surgery are things that only pro athletes would have experienced 20, 30 years ago. So it's for their own, obviously, physical health, but mental health. I say if you can, all the way till high school, play multiple sports. And again, a lot of high schools, and if you're not, go to your athletic director, go to your principal and say, we should have some no-cut sports. We need to allow our kids to be active. And again, not everybody wants to be competitive. It's not about being super competitive. It's about staying healthy and staying active because the longer we do that, we're setting them up for the life skills. And we need to parent the child we have, not the one we wish we had.
Yeah.
And
Amen to
by
that.
that,
Yeah.
it's hard to do that when you see that kid getting all the fame and glory and they're the best student and they're going, but Malcolm Gladwell's latest book, Revenge of the Tipping Point, he's 25 years on from the tipping point, and he studied a school in Florida, which he renamed. But he said what we're seeing is this, that we're all congregating in the same little pockets because, oh, these are the best students and they have the best athletes. And this school, which he wouldn't divulge the name of it, they had the highest suicide rate. They had 12 suicides in 4 years.
Oh my
And they
God.
said the problem with that were the ones that were doing it were the ones that were the most successful. Were the ones that you were like, oh, look at them. They've got the full ride. They're doing so it's not making us happier, right? It's making our kids more stressed out, more overwhelmed, and it's causing to the shutdown, and they're choosing permanent solutions for a short-term problem.
So true. It really is. What is the sweet spot? You talk about the sweet spot between, living life and being engaged in sports. Do you have an answer for that?
So we only get 18 summers with them. Yes, I know a lot of kids come and move home in summers during college, but in theory, if I believe, if we're doing it right, we're eventually sending them off into the world with the skills they need. So if every summer is, and I get all parents that say, we have to do travel. And you're like, well, what, how old are they? And they'll say 10. I'm like, well, what did you want to do this summer? Well, it's grandma's 80th birthday. We're not going to say no to every major life event. Yes, pick your options wisely, but you have to prioritize family time too. And I say have a team/family meeting. Okay, family, Joey, you've got this, Jill, you've got this, Susie, you've got this. Here's the things we want to do as a family. We're going to miss out on that one tournament and we're going to miss out on this one tournament because we as a family unit value having memories. We've got to make family memories. I guarantee you, families, they're not going to remember that 50-second soccer tournament of the year, but they were going to remember whitewater rafting together with their cousins or camping out in the backyard with like we've got to prioritize those because if we let all of those go because of the FOMO of, yeah, but coach says, and I get it. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
You have the coaches saying, if you miss one practice, you're not going to be on the roster. And I suffered that. We made the mistake. My son's freshman year of high school, he missed one basketball practice because of Thanksgiving because it was in another city, and he didn't play for 2 weeks, and it sucked. It was really hard to watch him. But we also have to say these are our values, and our kids will be fine.
Yeah, that coach was a little too intense. That would have I would have had a couple of words with that coach. You talk about being a potter with your kids.
Mhm.
I love that concept that you're and talk to everybody about what do you mean by being a potter uh, with your kids.
One of the most egoic things, if not the most egoic thing we can do as humans is procreate, right? Is to have children, right? And a lot of our ego as parents comes from look what I created, right? And we take such pride in how our kids are doing, and we should. We're proud of them, and we should be proud of them. But when we want to control absolutely everything that happens to them and through them, we're robbing them of the opportunity to. Sometimes it becomes an ashtray. Sometimes, just a barely hanging on teacup. But when we have this idea of I'm building this masterpiece and it has to be in my vision, my likeness, exactly like me, If you have more than one child, you'll know no two are alike.
Right.
Right? So they can have the same parents, they can come from the same DNA, but if we're going to do a copy paste in our parenting, you're going to have, some issues. And I like for parents to say, it's okay, like allowing them, if you don't want to do X, fine. It's not just, we're not going to, play basketball anymore, but we're going to pick something else. What's another thing that you find interesting? It's a research project because those skills, whether it's joining MUN or, you know, being an architect or drawing or math or science or going to the moon, like there's something in there for everybody. And a great story that I heard actually from the woman who painted this wall apparently worked with Spielberg. And she told me, she said, "Oh, yeah, Spielberg says he wrote a thank you letter to his freshman football coach. And the letter said, 'Thank you so much for cutting me. Because had you not cut me, I would have never picked up the camera.'" I don't know if that's true or not, but I love it. And, sometimes the door in your face is exactly what we need
Yeah.
to pivot, to be like, oh, it was that no that led me to this yes.
So many stories like that where you don't really know the journey, this journey of life, which is so fascinating when you actually stand back and look and see where you've been and and the things that influenced you and caused you to do what you want to do. A couple last questions I have for you. Number one, you have a kid who who needs to practice, who needs to you need to light a fire under them. Some people obviously light that fire, like Marinovich's father or Agassi's father, which was insanely. But what is that touch, that gentleness that you can employ to get your kid to practice? Because kids do need to practice. Certainly, if you're playing a musical instrument, for example, you need to practice. You need to learn. If you're a pitcher, you need to go out to or a hitter, you need to go out to the batting cage. So, tell us a little bit about that as well.
I'm sure you've talked about this much on your giving your background as a doctor, but what we know about youth is that their frontal lobe is wide open, right? So they have no executive functioning. They're not thinking about, cause and effect. They don't understand what's going to happen down the road if I don't do this, X, if I don't do X, Y will happen. So when the executive functioning isn't online, that's what drives us crazy as parents because we're pretty sure they're doing it just to torture us, right? That they're forgetting the homework or not doing the work or not putting in the effort. But I see it as we need to help them put in guardrails. Like, and if you equate it to bowling, when we put up the bumpers, we can keep the ball moving in the direction that it needs to go. We're
Yep.
not looking for a strike. We're not even looking for a spare. But what we're doing is competence builds confidence. So we want them, and whenever I work with an athlete, I'll always talk to them, when I ask them the parents, like, what are the areas that they really succeed in? And I bet you there are some secrets to their success. And it's not just, oh, they're super smart and they never try. No, there's usually a curiosity. Well, he really loves science and he's always, studying the stars and we're always together researching, yes, it wasn't just a fluke that he got an A in science. It's that he had a curiosity about it. So it's helping your child and some of it is block and tackle. Some of it is, yeah, put your stuff on the floor by the door the night before so that you can be ready to go. Some of it is dragging them when they're tired. We know, adolescents need 10 to 12 hours of sleep at night. We know they're on their phones until late into the night. Take the phone out of the bedroom, easier said than done, but giving them the sleep that they need in order and obviously the nutrition that they need and the hydration that they need so that they can show up as their best version.
Yeah.
My daughter was playing varsity for Carrie Klein, as our mutual friend, and they have 5:30 a.m. practice 6 days a week, right? And on a teenage brain, that is hard. And for 2 years, I would see, like snarls and growls. And every time I would say good morning, well, she was sleep deprived. And as soon as that was over, she'd come bouncing down and like, good morning, mom. And you're like, where have you been? The sleep, I can't it's a superpower.
Yeah.
Stanford's done studies on it. Just 1 more hour of sleep a night, the free throw percentage went up by 10%.
Wow.
Like, if you could increase your scores by 10% just by staying in bed with a phone off and lights off for 1 more hour, your grades go up, you feel better. Like those are some of the things that we can help as parents. And that's what I see our role is being the bumpers
Yep.
so that they can hit the wall. I'm not saying don't take away the wall. Allow them to have some of those moments, but also be there to say, you know what, I'm just going to keep you going in the right direction.
Amen to that. I think actually LeBron James is a big sleeper. Isn't that true? Do you know about this?
Yes.
I think he
Yes.
sleeps like 10 hours a night or something crazy like that. Is that true?
Yes, and he meditates twice a day, which I'm a huge believer in meditation too. And because meditation is actually 4 times deeper than sleep, the REM that you get in sleep. So even just introducing meditation one day, one 20-minute period a day can really, so when I work with athletes too, just how much time are you sitting there doing nothing? Actually just getting out of your head and into your body. That can really help your results too.
It's amazing. Well, listen, Kirsten, you have been a phenomenally excellent guest on my show. I am so honored that you're here.
Aw.
And so, how do people find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. As you can tell, I'm super passionate about
Yeah,
all
you
of this.
sure are. I
So
love it.
anything I can do to help, I'm at kirstenjonesinc.com is my website. My podcast is called #Raising Athletes. I've interviewed D1, D2, D3 coaches. I've interviewed authors, Jessica Leahy. I had Steve Kerr on talking about all of these things. And I believe success leaves clues. So when we talk to the people that have had the experience, follow those breadcrumbs. They're going to help you. You can find me on all the socials too,
That's
like
great.
Kirsten Jones Coach.
So,
Yeah.
Kirsten is spelled Kirstenjones is her last name. And she's out there. And her book is entitled Raising Empowered Athletes. This is a phenomenal read. By the way, whoever helped you on your book, they did a great job. I'm giving you the credit because your name's on the book. But it's a
No,
very, very,
I wrote it. They're my words,
and those
but
you
he helped shape it. He
shape it.
was my potter. But
Okay.
I'd never written a book before, so I struggled for 5 years by myself, and then I was like, I really want to write a good book. And so has written 25 of his own books. So every good person needs a coach,
That's
right?
right.
Whatever we're doing, having a coach to help you take it from a C to an A, that's what we're all looking to do
That's
in our
right.
parenting, in our work, right?
That's right.
Highly
You're
recommend it.
absolutely right. So, anyway, you guys did a great job. It's a very, very well written book. So, congratulations. So, friends, I first of all want to say thank you to Kirsten for coming on the show. Number one, and number two, friends, thank you for tuning into the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Until next time, be well. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.